The next step is to get an image of what you want to import in. So here we're just using Google Maps to find a location. Other things that I've done or that I've searched for, like for example, these satellite imagery work as well. So I did a search for Lake Michigan. And so here we have an image that we could work with. So there's lots of information out there about how you might want, or the image types that you might want to import. You can even use clip art as well. So it just depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Now, this application is not going to give you the true topology heights for this, but it will do a pretty good job of just giving you the variation of the different contours. Then you might want to use a tool like GIMP or Photoshop, to either clean the image up. I tried turning it to grayscale. It didn't seem to matter having it grayscale or not. But what does matter is the size of the image. I typically try to keep the image under 2,000 pixels just from a speed and performance perspective. And scaling the image has no effect on the accuracy or the contour shapes that it generates. So once you save this image off to a folder, the next step will be to bring it into Fusion 360. So here we are inside of Fusion 360. Now the important thing is you want to be working in capture history mode. If you try to run this script and you're not in capture history mode, it'll let you know that you need to turn that on. So what we're going to do is just import our photograph. So under Tools, Add-ins, we're going to run this Show Image to Surface function. And see, here you get a user interface. You can browse to your file or just drop it in. So we're going to browse to the file. And we're going to use that Lake Ontario that I originally found. Once you have it in here, you can kind of see, this is something you can view and look at and examine, before you actually go to the next step. These settings up here are kind of the defaults. They work pretty well, but you can actually tweak these and change these around. If you lower this, it seems to make it much more mesh spaces, which causes Fusion some challenges from a speed and performance perspective. So I typically I might leave this at the original 5. The height map, of course, that allows you to play around, so you can increase that height map. Let's just do something really crazy here and just do 50, just so you can kind of see what that would look like. That's probably way too much for what we need. So we'll stick with 5. The other options that I like are the smooth option here. If you turn that off, you're going to get some some pointy shapes, and eventually we're going to convert this mesh to a T-spline. So having the smooth option, I think, is a good choice for that. Now here we're going to just click Generate Surface, and so once we do that, it will generate our surface for us inside of Fusion. So this is our mesh inside of Fusion. And so okay, so we can see here that it's imported this mesh. We could machine right on this, but I found it's much simpler if I convert this to a T-spline to add additional features to this. Maybe I want to put a north direction up here. Maybe I want to put some text on here that says what this is. All that kind of stuff to really make this. Also kind of give it some depth here to be able to make my my final piece. The first thing I want to do at this point is I'm going to create a sketch that just represents my stock size. I have no idea how big this thing is. I could of course inspect it and measure it. So we'll just measure this. Just kind of getting out. It's 8 inches across. And I'm just going to say for my shape Boko 3 standard, I'm going to say this is going to be 11.25 wide, so it's, and then 15 this direction. So there's my stock size that I'm going to want to have, you know, for this. So essentially a 1 by 12 piece of wood. Next, I want to edit this mesh, and so what I'm going to do is just kind of scale this mesh up to kind of fit, you know, what I want to cut in the area that I want to cut. Cancel that. Go here, and then we'll select a new point down here. .57. We'll just play with these numbers a little bit to get as much space as I can muster out of this thing. That looks pretty good. And then we're just going to, you know, eyeball this and just kind of move it into the center of that. Okay, so now we can finish this mesh. The next thing we want to do is we'll go into our design environment with our T-splines, and we'll use this utilities to convert quad mesh to T-splines. We'll choose OK here, select the mesh, choose OK. This may take some time, so be patient with it. This took about a minute on my computer, and I'm just running a Surface Book laptop, nothing crazy. And then the last step here is the finish form. Sometimes when you hit this finish form function, you do get this T-spline failing. So then you got to kind of look and see why it might have failed. There might be gaps or overlapping edges that are in here. Again, this may take some time to run. And this took about a minute. It did not get any failures, and you can see now we have two objects in our tree here, our mesh and our body, our T-spline body. Really don't need the mesh anymore, so I'm just going to delete it just to save space in this model. And now I'm left with my T-spline body. Okay, so now I'm ready to maybe start adding some other things here. So I'm just going to edit this sketch again. Or maybe I'll create a new one so I can see what's there. So first thing I'm going to do is just offset this plane here. I'm just going to pull it down maybe a ½ inch. And then I'll use that as my sketching plane. And I'm just going to draw a rectangle, not completely on the outside bounds, but I'm just going to kind of eyeball it and just kind of get close to the outer edge here. And keep in mind you've got a pretty dense mesh and T-spline here, so your performance, you know, might be affected by this. So be patient with it. Okay, so here you can see I have it fairly close to this, and we'll just finish our sketch. Okay, so now what we'll do, I'm just going to hide this first sketch. And now what we're going to do is just simple press pull. We're going to go here, and then we're going to say up to object. We're going to select our T-spline. We'll choose OK. And now we can turn off our original T-spline, and we're left with, solid geometry here that we can apply any operation to. We could actually go into that T-spline and manipulate it. We could add more features in here as well. So whatever you want to do with this.